Related from every other world. Yeah. So, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely
I,
right. So, hello everybody, we are here. We are doing a layperson's attempt to get a handle on possible worlds. Um, yeah, right?
Modal realism.
No, we're
And
cool, we're cool. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
great start so far, guys. How's everyone doing?
Fine. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to stay, but I'll stay as long as I can.
Now, there is a possible world where we started on time and we nailed this
yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Summed it
And
up.
that will be a meaningful statement soon. So,
Very good, James.
well,
Okay, I'm back. So, just real quick. So, I always thought, as a typical layperson who's had no philosophy at all, that the whole possible world thing was simply a way to kind of explain things, especially to sort of, I don't know, formalize in what happens in regular language when we talk about if only this had happened, then that would have happened, right?
Yeah.
And then I read this brief history, and I was shocked and dismayed to discover that, in fact, there's a metaphysics that goes along with it. And the one that was the most just sort of mind-blowing to me was this modal realism, which is the idea that, in fact, all of these possible worlds that you posit when you're thinking about if such and such, if only such and such would have happened, then X would have turned out a different way. It's the idea that those things are actual worlds. I mean, that's probably the wrong way to say it, but the idea that possible worlds really exist somehow. And this, of course, screws with my head because I don't have an ontology. I'm kind of like sort of a vague, naive physicalist. I don't like the idea of abstract things really existing, but I don't want to deny that abstract things exist because they do exist in a kind of a way. And so I'm sort of floating around on the top of life going, yeah, things exist in a way, but they don't, but abstract things don't exist, and just kind of surmising that the real problem is something about the way we use the word exist.
Because you have evidence for it.
Yeah, right. But I know that naive physicalism isn't exactly right. It can't be right? So I've got this sort of mindset where, I've got to fix my naive physicalism because I don't really believe it, but I don't know what other word to use. And then bang, I read this brief history, and holy shit,
there's a whole following, yeah.
there are legit philosophers who hold to modal realism, and I'm like, that can't be right. They're lying. They can't possibly really hold to it. But no, I mean, if we take them at their word, they really do. So this is the beginning of
and point one makes that clear, doesn't it? Possible worlds exist. They are just as real as our world. What the hell does real mean there, I wonder?
Yeah, well,
so real, what the hell, right? So I thought we would start with Joe because I thought I'd have 2 hours of prep that I didn't get. Well, so all of these terms I thought I would have a nice little definition for. I don't have. We thought we'd start with Joe because, and you can see online here we've got the main tenets of modal realism. Let's look at modal realism first and see where the hangout goes from there.
Can I ask a question before we destroy or attack Joe?
Well, we're not going to attack him. We're going to feature him.
I'm not a modal realist. Well, continue. Go ahead.
Why does everybody scoff at number one?
Okay, let's read number one. Somebody read number one out loud. I'm going to mute because
number one, possible worlds exist. They are just as real as our world.
That's a claim.
That's quite a statement, isn't it? They are just as real in every sense.
We're kind of jumping ahead already. I mean, I think I think maybe it should be the case that we can explain why the concept of a possible world is even postulated. Why people use the concept of a possible world.
Are we saying?
So from what I remember from having read my brief history, and it was 2 days ago, so now everything I thought I knew I don't know anymore. But from what I remember, the things that support sort of being a modal realist are all practical. They're all pragmatic. There's like, it makes this easier and it makes that easier and that kind of thing. Does anyone know of anything besides pragmatic reasons to adopt modal realism?
Well, The one of the I don't know if it is just a subset of what you were describing, but one of the reasons why it's seen as elegant is because it the way that it consolidates different concepts instead of having like all these. I mean, immediately you think if you're actualizing, or I think it's instantiating a possible world just by positing a possibility about some um, discussion or whatever, some topic. Immediately you think there's just going to be, I mean, there's an infinite number. It's a mess of a theory to have all these actual worlds like around. It's called the pluriverse because it gets mixed up with the multiverse, which is a thing actually that's separate. So it's like the plural verse or something. Anyways, the issue is that in in actually saying that these are actual worlds, you're able to mm, you're able to ground truth, and it makes these actual worlds actually necessary. And
Wait,
when
so
you
you're
want to have
saying? Go ahead. Go on. Go on.
well, when you want to have an elegant like theory, it's pertaining to the thing like Occam's razor. Um, don't multiply auxiliary hypotheses beyond necessity. But in the argument for modal realism, I'm fairly certain you're demonstrating how these possible worlds are necessary, and so in being, and they're necessary for a number of reasons. One of them being,
Yeah, and the fact they say possible worlds exist, and they're just does suggest they are necessary, doesn't it?
I'm sorry.
Well, it says possible worlds exist in these tenets, and they are just as real as our world, which means they are.
Did he cut out for everyone else?
Can I ask?
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
did, but he was going to finish that with necessary.
Can
Yeah.
I
Well,
ask?
well, I mean, that's the whole point. When you're talking, that's another reason why you're doing modal logic, is you're talking about you're talking about things that are necessary and like contingency, that kind of things. But again, I think like, did we even define what a possible world is? I think really if we step back a bit and we explain how it's used and why it developed into what David Lewis came up with, which is modal realism, which is what we've been talking about so far. I think that might give us some interesting background or a context that will.
Sure. So I've got a layperson's definition of possible worlds. A possible world is a total way that things could have been, right? Including everything, like all of time and all of space. That is a possible world. It is a way in totality that things could have been. So what do you guys think of that?
Say that again.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, but I was thinking more in the direction, if we're talking about possible other worlds, then we're talking about dimensions. Then we're talking about space-time continuum and whatnot, and
I think
The
it's
thing,
holding all of those things. So it's not like an act. It's not like another planet, right? It is in fact sort of, to me anyway,
another
a
possible world.
possible worlds are not they're not causally they cannot causally affect each other. Like
right.
another
So
Yeah,
possible
okay.
world can't causally affect us, so it wouldn't be like another dimension. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's all. So here's the definition I'm positing, and then you experts fix it. I think of it as a total way that things could have been, kind of period. Right? Now, does anyone have a better definition? Fix it for me.
I mean, there's a couple different ways to define it. The way that I was looking at it, it was like the utility of a possible world. The one that I kind of liked was possible worlds are posited to what is it? Identify truth claims, or
Okay, but you're
uh,
going past the definition of possible world now.
well, I'm actually okay with your definition then.
Okay.
It's
Does anybody hate my definition or see a major flaw or
I'm
anything
still
like
trying
that?
to figure it out. I'm trying hard to wrap my head around it. So, I mean, are we talking something as simple like we talk about imaginary numbers in math? Is that kind of what we're talking about? Like they sort of
I
exist?
don't think so. So this is the way I came to the idea that it was sort of a total way things could have been, is sort of trying to trace sort of why did we come up with using possible worlds. And it was because, I think, and again, all of this is with all the caveats that apply to me as a newbie, right? We didn't have a way to sort of formalize an expression like, boy, if you had, if I hadn't caught you right then, that train would have run you over and you'd be dead. All right. So the idea was, well, how can we sort of formalize that, make it formal, so that we can do real quote unquote logic on it, right? And the way is, what does it mean when I say, but for X and X having happened, Y would have happened, right? So if not X had happened, then Y would have happened. Well, what we mean by that is that there is another world where if X had happened, Y wouldn't have happened. You see what I'm saying? So that's sort of why I'm getting the idea that it's sort of a total way things could have been, right? So when I say, if I hadn't grabbed you, you'd be dead. We needed a way to make symbols and crap like that out of it, because everybody was into formalizing everything and making symbols. And the way to do that is, what does it mean when I say, if I hadn't grabbed you, you'd be dead? It means, in some other world that is possible, I didn't grab you and you died. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and but yeah, that sounds, yeah, it's solid. The thing with the possible worlds, in order to make sense of, if I didn't grab you, you would have died. In order to see if that's something that we could say is true, possible worlds are also posited. Because when you want to speak of truth, presumably you want to connect something that's true with a part of presumably you want something to be true to be accurate with respect to a part of the actual um,
Um,
of reality. What's up, Nadia?
well, which kind of possibility are we speaking of here? Is it like logical, metaphysical, physical, or
Metaphysical.
Metaphysical.
metaphysical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Metaphysical. So let's talk about that. So there are three different kinds of possibilities, I guess, right? So physical, possible and necessary, metaphysical, possible and necessary, and logical, possible and necessary. And this is the thing that's interesting, another interesting thing, and I think it was with metaphysical, but again, I didn't have my prep time, so I can't remember. But one of them involves essences, right? And I'm like, what the hell? Essences? You've got to be kidding me, right? Where in the other world, whatever is my essence has to stay the same. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't count, right? So that bothered me a lot. I don't know why it bothers me, but something about that bothers me, and I think it's related to my reluctance to accept abstract things as real things. But so let's, Nadia, perhaps you perhaps know these definitions. Sort of physical possibility and necessity versus metaphysical possibility and necessity versus logical possibility and necessity in the context of possible worlds. So I'm throwing that to you. If you don't know it, no big whoop. But if you do know it, that would be fab.
Well, I have a little bit of an idea, but I have more of a position on it, which is that I think distinctions are not really very coherent. I think well, ultimately, if there's some kind of metaphysical right answer and so on, some kind of metaphysical realism, then, well, I think you're going to end up with some elements of necessitarianism down to, in effect, the things that are contra-causal, right? So, or events that are contra-causal. And they're the big dodge out of, or escape hatch out of necessitarianism.
So my dogs just went nuts. So I'm going to have to ask you to repeat everything you just said, and I really apologize about that.
Oh, I don't think they're well posed. I have more opinion about them than some kind of informed way to explain them, which is basically that I don't think they're well posed. I don't think you can really say that most of these ideas are possible in any kind of meaningful sense. I mean, as a logical consequence of whatever kind of prior physical state, you pretty much have kind of a necessitarianism down to contra-causal influences, right? So like Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, truly random quantum events, whatever. So and I think it's well clear from that, basically only really I think the physical possibility matters, and it's just and I think the only way it makes sense is what if the dice rolls and so on had come out a different way.
So you think that it's stupid to go to a metaphysical possibility or even a logical possibility? I mean, so I think we all kind of get the idea that logical is sort of the biggest one, and metaphysical is kind of in the middle, and physical possibility is the most constrained. So physical, does everyone agree with that much? You guys talk about it. I'm going to go see if I can't find a decent definition.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of the sort of analysis I'm presenting is that I think even though where people try to present them as being like some kind of proper containment or whatever, progressively more constrained, I think they end up actually being all identical. Right?
Well, okay, so where I was going with the whole purpose of truth, like I mean, presumably we want to say like a mundane statement that Bernie Sanders didn't win New York a couple days ago. That is true, and you can say it's true on the various ways you come to truth, but a general idea would be you have a concept of truth that is accurate with your reality. And so when you posit a possible world, and when you say a statement like, if Bernie did win New York, then Donald Trump would stage a coup and storm the White House. I could posit there's a possible world where that's what happened. And in that possible world, which is like pretty much identical to our actual world, because of that, you could say that the statement that I said in that possible world is accurate with respect to what you would call the reality of that possible world. Now, what I think David Lewis then goes on to say that if it's the case that we ground our truth in the concrete objects and things of our actual world, then in these possible worlds, you're doing the same thing. If you want to say your claim is true. So it would be the case that there is a concrete possible world out there where Trump is now the emperor of America because he staged a coup and attacked the White House. Because to say that's true is to ground it in, or is to make it a statement that's accurate with respect to the reality of that world. And so that's where modal realism comes in. And it's very bizarre, but it's kind of neat. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly bizarre, but is anyone at least intrigued by the idea? Like
I'm intrigued.
I'm
I am
sorry.
intrigued, and I am appalled. both.
Yeah,
I am deeply confused.
the thing is, the
What?
logic part of it is
What?
it does
Can
make
you guys
sense,
hear
though.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
It would just I feel like I'm in an exam and I didn't study. What are we what are you guys talking about?
Modal logic slash realism.
Okay, so here's in general what we're talking about. I'll give it to you real quick. I used to think, until I read a little book 2 days ago that I've now forgotten everything about, I used to think that thinking about possible worlds was all sort of a mental exercise, right? And that we needed a possible world formal talk kind of thing so that we could make symbolic logic more whole, so that it would capture more better the way we talk. And so when people would say in Hangouts, well, that's not possible in any world, right? There is no possible world where that would be true. I was fine with that, and it really did help me kind of think of things. And it was a way to sort of reframe if-then statements when something had already occurred, right? Like, if only if I hadn't grabbed you from the train, you'd be dead now, right? There's no way to write that up, using
Right.
P's and Q's,
Like,
right?
when you mean worlds, do you mean dimensions?
No. We literally mean another state of affairs. Okay? So I thought, in my stupid sort of layperson mentality, that all of this talk about possible worlds was really designed just to deal with our language, so that we had a way to express things like the one I just said. If I hadn't grabbed you, you'd be dead now. But in fact, I read this little book, and it turns out that of course, why didn't I think of it? There's a metaphysics associated with doing such a thing, right? And the most outrageous metaphysical position is this thing called, at least to me, at least now, modal realism, which is that when you think of potential worlds, like if I say to you, if I hadn't caught you, you'd be dead. What I'm saying is, there is a possible world where I didn't grab you and you died, right? And there's nothing inconsistent there. That could have happened. I could have failed to grab you and you are now dead, right? So I just thought it was another way of expressing that so that we could have a nice way to write stuff out. In fact, no. Obviously, there's metaphysics involved, because if you're going to say that that's a better way to express it, that there is a possible world where I didn't catch you and you died via train, well, now we have to think, well, hold on, is there really a possible world? And there's this thing called modal realism, where it seems to me they hold yes. All of these possible worlds that I always thought we were just fictionally positing so that we could explain things and talk to one another better, in fact, are actual possible worlds. In other words, they really exist. They are as real as the possible world we happen to be in. And so that position, I believe, if I'm not strawmanning, and I can't believe that Ozzy's in the comments and won't come in to help
Why
us.
won't he come in? Because I'm drowning here.
Well, he
think
won't come in. I don't know.
I think I have my answer.
He
At
likes to
least
see us.
that's
He
what I think.
likes to see us
He
flounder
likes to
around.
he likes to see the purple vein on my fucking forehead explode.
Yeah, he wants us to suffer. That's the
Hey,
only
Helen.
explanation.
Hey, Helena, if
Yeah.
we're talking about the scenario of you not grabbing somebody or pulling somebody away from the tracks and then that person gets hit by the train, um, what if that possibility is like it says the dicto and the ray? The dicto is necessarily some x is such that it is a, and the ray is some x is such that it is necessarily a. So another explanation is it doesn't matter if you didn't pull somebody away in a different world at the same moment. Somebody could have pushed that somebody off the track, likewise pulled that person off the track, kicked that person off the track, yelled to that person off the track. But whatever happened, that horse did not get off the track. So everything,
God.
everything of that happened.
Oh my
We're
God!
Yeah,
Ozzy!
Jesus Christ! Everyone kneel.
I want
All
to
right,
ask
can I just say, everybody shut the hell up?
I want to
Because
ask a question.
wait, I just want to say something. I knew we could compel Ozzy if we botched this well enough. So congratulations to everyone. We have sufficiently botched it up, and we have summoned the Oz. Ozzy, help us!
Wait. Can I ask a quick question about
Sure, go ahead.
this line of reasoning so far? We've got to the point where, okay, I'm sitting at my dinner table right now, and on another possible world, I'm sitting at my dinner table and I'm 53 years old. My birthday's August. You're assuming an awful lot that my life on another world is exactly the same way as it is now. Like, I don't understand why, if I
Yeah.
away from a
it would
tree,
it would make more sense if you leave a possible.
world, you're going through the exact same experience. That's making an awful lot of assumptions.
Yeah, but if
No,
you leave
hold
the
on,
possible
because
world,
there's a
wait,
difference,
wait.
right?
If you leave the possible world out, if you just leave a possibility, how about that? That would make even make more sense. If you just
Well, that
leave
would make sense if God has predetermined everything.
no, a
James,
possibility
how
that
dare you say God?
I'm sorry, but there's no other reason to believe that if another world existed and I existed on that world, that the life there would be exactly the same as it is here.
Okay, so
makes sense.
this is about this thing about essences, right? I couldn't even believe it. One of these theories involves that the essence has to be the same, right? Everything else can be different so long as the essence is the same, right? So, like, what is the essence of me? Ostensibly, it's that I'm human. So if I'm going to put myself in other worlds, I have to keep at least the human part. And I think that's the one that's called metaphysical other world or what have you. But can we let Ozzy help us, at least Ozzy, get us started? And how dare you wait until we all made fools of ourselves, or at least I made a fool of myself, before you
did.
Nobody made a fool of himself.
before you waltzed in here.
he was
No,
waiting till
no.
everything was boiling.
No, nobody made a fool of themselves. This is actually a very difficult, thorny subject that sounds absolutely wild. But when you think about it, then you can understand why people are driven to what seems like the most metaphysically extravagant hypothesis you've ever heard of.
Okay, help me figure out why people are driven there, because to me it was
Okay.
like, what? I
Okay.
can't even believe this.
Okay,
I
I'm
was
gonna-
like shocked. I was shocked and appalled.
Okay, I'm going to try to be brief because I can't stay. But
Okay.
okay, just let me address something James said about, like, it seems kind of presumptuous that there's some other possible world where I would be doing this, that, and the other thing, and how could you know that? And that you have to understand that these are possible worlds. There is a possible world where Ozzy is in this hangout. There's a possible world where Ozzy decided to join this hangout a microsecond later. There's a possible world where Ozzy joined this hangout a microsecond sooner. There's a possible world where I joined 2 seconds sooner, 3 seconds sooner, 4 seconds sooner. There's a possible world where I didn't join at all. There's a possible world where I wasn't born at all. There's a possible world where I have one more head. There's a possible world where I have one more hair on my head, 2 more hairs on my head, 3 more hairs. All possible worlds exist. So the question, well, it's presumptuous. What makes you think that there's a possible world where James is sitting in his kitchen and doing this, that, and the other thing? The idea is, look, these are possibilities. Unless it's contradictory, unless there's a contradiction, and unless it's internally inconsistent, right? That possible world, okay, is coherent, right? Now, I don't want to beg the question about whether or not it exists, but it doesn't make any sense to say you can't talk about that. Of course, you can talk about
the question of whether or
Oh,
not
no,
it
we will
exists.
get to that. We will get to the question about whether
That's
it
the
exists,
thing that I
because
couldn't
that's what this
even
is about.
believe. Oh my
No,
God!
But I just
All
want James to understand that there's nothing presumptuous about talking about a possible world where you're doing something else in your kitchen, right? It's no different than imagining a possible world where you're sitting in your kitchen and having a cigarette, or not having a cigarette. I mean, this is just a possible world. Is just a world like this one that differs in one or more respects.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So it's just a thought experiment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just think of it as a
Possibility.
maximally consistent state of affairs where there's no inconsistencies, there's no logical contradictions in there. I don't want to get into the question of impossibilia, of impossible states of affairs. If you think modal realism is weird, there's something called extreme modal realism. people who believe in impossibilia, that there are impossible worlds. Let's not go there. It gets even crazier. Okay, but to understand what motivates this question. Okay, Steve in the side chat was asking a question. Okay, and I put the challenge to him this way. Listen, ask yourself, if someone says something like, if there were no humans, if humans had never evolved, okay, there'd be less pollution. Okay. Now, most people would probably say, yeah, that'd be true. There'd be less pollution if there were no humans. Okay. There'd certainly be less plastic, right? Because nothing would have come along that would have invented plastic, presumably, right? We could at least imagine a state of affairs where humans didn't evolve and nothing evolved that was capable of making plastic, and so plastic didn't get invented, and so there's not a lot of plastic pollution lying around, okay? Or styrofoam or whatever, okay? Now, ask yourself, what makes that sentence true? If humans hadn't evolved, there'd be less pollution in the world. If that statement is true, what in the world, literally, what in the world makes it true?
Nothing.
It's not describing this world.
Nothing makes that true, but something makes it true.
Wait, yeah, nothing makes it true. Wait, nothing makes it true? Oh, okay, so that statement's not true.
No. Nothing makes it true.
But we all think it's true, right? We all think, right? Or we say, if Obama hadn't won the election, Sarah Palin would be vice president or something like that, okay? Look, that statement presumably is true, right? She'd be vice president, right? Most likely she'd be vice president, or would have been vice president, right? What makes a sentence like that true? That's what we call a counterfactual conditional. It's an if-then statement. If this had happened, then that would have happened, right? That's a subjunctive conditional, okay? There are other kinds of conditionals, indicative. We won't get into those. But when you have a conditional statement that is counterfactual, that is contrary to the facts, you can't say, well, there are facts in this world that make it true, because it's precisely what didn't happen.
Yeah.
I know, but you don't have.
And that's modal realistic. And that's the modal realistic part, It could be like you said in the short video clip before. It's the counterfactual statement that only exists in the modal realistic view. That's it. It could have been.
No. We all understand that it could have been.
Right.
It's this idea that because we need some kind of truth maker in order for the truth of the conditional to become a real truth or something, therefore there must be real worlds, real other worlds. That's the one. That's the one that gets it. Like, I can't even believe it.
Is it like this, where you sit there and say how George Bush, when he invaded, if he never won the election, Gore would be president and we wouldn't have ISIS and all this shit going on right now? Is that kind of
right
another world like that?
Well, no, that kind of statement is called a counterfactual conditional. It's a conditional statement. It's an if-then statement, right? Okay. But it's counterfactual. It's contrary to the facts. It's precisely what didn't happen, right? Now, we utter sentences like that all the time, right? If I had stepped off the curb and you hadn't stopped me right then, I would have been hit by the bus. I'd be dead right now, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we make statements like that every single day of our lives, okay? We live by those statements. Literally, we live by those statements. Should I do this or should I do that? Well, if I do this, this will happen. If I do that, that would happen, right? If I hadn't done this, that would have happened. Thank goodness I did that, because then, otherwise that wouldn't have happened. We live by counterfactual conditionals every day, and we think they're true. But what makes a sentence true? Well, we normally think that there's a state of affairs, an actual state of affairs that makes a proposition true. If I say, this is a human hand, what makes it true that there's a human hand? Well, the fact that there's a human hand is what makes the proposition, here is a human hand, true. What makes a counterfactual conditional statement true? What are we referring to? What does that proposition refer to? What could it possibly be talking about? If you're saying, look, it's not something that happened in this world, then there can't be something in this world that makes it true, so the argument goes. But then what are we talking about? We must be describing an alternate reality, another way that reality could be. And so the idea is that we are implicitly, we don't realize that we're doing this, but we are implicitly positing another possible world, a world similar to our world, but that differs in certain respects. It differs in that in another possible world, I got hit by a bus because I stepped off the curb and no one stopped me in time. Okay, so
why does that other world have to exist?
And because if it doesn't exist,
Otherwise, there's no
because if
truth
it
maker.
yes, if it doesn't exist, then there isn't a state of affairs that makes the proposition true, and so that proposition wouldn't be true because there's nothing to make it the case that it's true. What makes a proposition true? It's not a state of affairs that makes it true.
Oh my
Right?
God.
So that's why. So it sounds like the most crazy thing in the world. Like it's so metaphysically extravagant, right? But
Yeah.
and of course it is metaphysically extravagant. But someone like Lewis who posits this modal realism would say, well, yeah. So what? We're all being metaphysically extravagant implicitly when we talk this way. We've just never realized. We've never appreciated the metaphysical commitments involved in making those statements. We've just taken them for granted. And all I'm doing, in pointing this out, is pointing out what you're already committed to. You just stop to find out that this is what you're committed to. Too bad. So much the worse for your incredulity and your shock at the ignorance of the metaphysical commitments that you're making moment by moment. But you are always making. So that's how the argument goes. Okay, so that's why this is not completely crazy, as extravagant as it sounds. And so what someone like Lewis is trying to say is this: in all of these, you have all these possible worlds, all these other alternate ways that reality could be. Okay, and they actually exist. So what does it mean to say that something actually happened? When you use a word like actual, or when you say this is real or this is true, and you're not talking, right? What are you talking about? If I say it's true that this is a hand, this is actually a mouse. What do those words mean? Real and true and actual. Those are indexicals. An indexical is a word like this and here and now.
It points to something.
Yeah, it points. Yeah, they point to something. Yeah, this is actually
like your index finger, right?
It's like your index finger. It points. It indicates, right? If I say you, what is the meaning of you? Well, it's whoever I'm talking to and whoever I'm pointing at when I say you. And what's the meaning of the word me? Well, the referent of me is whoever's uttering the word me when they utter it. And if I say now, what time is now? Now is when it's being uttered. So those are all indexicals.
So what that they're indexicals? So what?
Well, the point is, the idea is that this makes sense of the distinction between our world and a possible. What's the difference between our world and a possible world? Our world is just another possible world. It's just that when we talk about real and true and actual, it's not a higher status. It just means this bloody world, right? That's all it means. When you say it's real, it's true, it's actual, all you're saying is it happened in this possible world. Our world isn't more real. It's just one of another possible world, of many possible worlds. People in our counterparts, the Aussie with one more hair in another possible world, when he says real, actual, and true, he's talking about stuff that goes on in his world. I'm just a possible world from his standpoint. Okay, so it's a kind of relativism here. So this is called actualism. So the actual world is just this world, your world, right? So all you're saying when you say that this is real and that's only possible, all you're doing is talking about your world, but they're all equally real, right? Stop being so damn chauvinistic about your world. It's not more real than a possible world, so the argument goes. Does that make sense? You don't have to agree with it, but does it make sense? Does it?
Yeah,
It does.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
If I get this right, then it's for example, like you said, if I miss the bus, or like I said, I'm too late for the bus, it could be either A or B, and you say, well, I took A, but if for example I took a turn to the right, I would have arrived at work late, but you don't know. That's the modal realistic part. You don't know because you didn't take B, so you wouldn't know what's happening. So you only would know what has actually happened at A. So when you talk about B, you're not talking about reality or what happened in this world, in your world. You're talking about what could have happened in modal realism.
No,
right?
not what could have happened. What did happen in some other guy's world? If you hadn't stopped me from stepping off the curb, I would have been killed by that bus. What I'm talking about is the Aussie counterpart in another world where he did get killed by a bus because someone didn't stop him. Right?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about possibilities, you are referring to real things. Okay, so when you say, "Whew, man, I'm glad I didn't step off the curb. I would have been killed." What you're actually talking about, what makes that statement true, is that there is an Aussie who did get killed, right? Or a you who did get killed. But it's not you, it's your counterpart. It is something relevantly similar to you that differs in some respect. Namely, he got killed by the bus and you didn't. That's what makes that statement true. And so the challenge would be this. If you want to be chauvinistic and say, no, my world is real, no, those are just BS nonsense made up worlds. Those are merely notional worlds. Okay, fine. So those aren't real states of affairs, right? No, it didn't actually happen, right? Great. You know what's interesting about states of affairs that don't exist, that aren't actual, that aren't real at all? They can't make counterfactual conditional statements true. So what in the world are you talking about when you say, if I'd stepped off the curb, I would have been killed by the bus? If there's no state of affairs that makes that true, that statement can't be true.
True,
So
yeah.
shut up and stop talking like that. Stop using this counterfactual conditional talk. You're not entitled to talk about it. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth when you use counterfactual conditionals, and you will not agree that you are in fact referring to something. You were going around talking about counterfactual conditionals like they're real, like they have a truth value, right? Hey, if the Germans had won the war, we'd all be speaking German, right? If you think that's true, what on earth makes that true, right? But presumably you do think that statements of that sort can be true.
That's a counterfactual statement, yeah.
What on earth could make them true? And there's another wrinkle.
Wait. Hold on. My hangout. Before we talk about the other things that the other thing, and before whoever it was who wanted to ask a question, let me just say this. Ozzy, while we have you, because I know you said you had to leave soon, can you tell us the difference between modal realism and modal actualism? I know Lewis was the modal realist and Plantinga was is the modal actualist, but I don't quite understand the distinction. Can you tease that out for us?
No, I can't. I'd have to reread it. This is stuff I read as an undergraduate. I haven't read this stuff in years, and so I can't do the fine-tooth comb thing and tease that apart. I'm really sorry. I wish I could.
It's okay. I read it 2 days ago, and I don't remember.
It sounds like you gave a lecture last week about this.
No. I just remember I remember teaching a little bit about this to undergrads, but I mean it was so long, and I haven't read. There's a wonderful little book by was a Huge Idiot. Somebody recommended it. I think it was Huge Idiot. Recommended.
Huge Idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. Called Metaphysics, and it's by Michael Liu, and he's got a chapter in there on possible worlds. And I remember reading that book. Like it's gone through many editions. It's used as a standard text in metaphysics courses, and it has the virtue of being fairly brief. It's fairly dense, hard reading, but it pays off. So it's a good little book for anyone who's interested in that.
Chapter 5, and I'll put the link because there's a free copy to edition. I think the 3rd edition, even the most recent edition. So I'll put a link down at the bottom of the YouTube when we're done for that. Okay. And this discussion is in Chapter 5, but it is dense, right? So just be ready. Yeah. But I didn't get a chance to finish reading it, so that's why I was hoping maybe he would come in, but he's not. So anyway.
All right. But there's one other wrinkle I want to throw in, another sort of argument that's sometimes used by...
I can't wait.
And well, it has to do with probability and likelihood. If I say, it's likely that such and such would have happened, okay, well, presumably all the causal determinants for something that's going to happen are in place, right, in this world, right? I mean, if something is sufficient to make something happen, and something happens, that means the causal determinants that are sufficient to make that thing happen were already in place, okay? And presumably, everything that's going to happen in this world is going to happen, right? It means the truism, of course. But now think about it. When we say, I think it's likely that that's going to happen. I think it's more likely that that's going to happen. I think it's more probable that this is going to happen. What are we talking about here? Well, this possible world semantics that people use helps you understand that. What they say is, well, look, there are all these possible worlds, and when you say such and such is more likely, what they're saying is, I think our world, what we call the actual world, but it's just one of many possible worlds, okay, is in a set of possible worlds where this does happen, okay, compared to possible worlds where that doesn't happen. And to say that this is more likely than that is simply to say that we live in a world where this that is similar to worlds where that does happen. And then there are other worlds that are sufficiently dissimilar that we wouldn't expect that such and such would happen. Right? So you can actually cash out our concept of likelihood and probability in terms of possible worlds. There are some possible where there's if 80% of possible worlds such and such happens, then it makes sense to, if you think that you're in one of those worlds, to say it's probable that such and such will happen. All you're saying there is, I think I'm in this class of possible worlds, as opposed to that class of possible worlds where that didn't happen, and so isn't going to happen, right? Anyway, so I know this is like, absolutely weird, but one thing to understand here is that, okay, so this is really wildly counterintuitive, right? But what modal realists would argue is this: look, so much the worse for your intuitions. Okay, it just turns out that you are in fact presupposing an awful lot that you don't realize that you're presupposing. You are committing yourself to a metaphysical state of affairs that you'd never considered. But all that is to say that you've never thought through the implications of how we talk. And maybe we're just not entitled to use this kind of talk. Okay, maybe we are not justified. Maybe it is just an article of faith that we are actually talking about states of affairs that are not actual. But all that means is that they didn't happen in this world. They're happening in some other possible world, okay, which is equally real to our own, right? And so what if it turns out that so what if in your talk you're committing yourself to more than that? Now you might say, well, I don't want to commit myself to that much. Okay, fine, but then you've got a challenge here. You either have to come up with another way to make sense of that kind of talk. That is to say, you have to have another theory that explains why, for instance, counterfactual conditionals can have a truth value when they can't depend on this world, presumably, unless you think there's a way. Or you've got to be consistent and stop using that kind of talk.
Just say, I don't
Right.
know.
I
I don't know.
Well, you can say I don't know, but all that is to say is I don't know how to justify this extravagant metaphysical commitment.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying I don't know to, right? But the idea is you are still metaphysically committed to it. You have committed yourself to this extravagant metaphysics of all possible worlds. All the myriad ways that reality could be are equally real, right? And it's just a kind of chauvinism to imagine that our world is more real, right? So the idea is that the concept of more real doesn't make sense, right? Everything, it's all equally real. Okay, as hilarious as that is. Okay. Anyway, on that weird note, I got to.
Does anybody else
One
find this
question.
hilarious, or am I the only one?
Well, I love the way philosophy can actually sort of can sort of tickle you this way.
It's so fun.
I
Is there an
wanted to ask
explanation
just
that there
one thing.
is not, go ahead.
Is when they say worlds, I always hear the thing dimensions. Like
no, not
like
dimensions.
that's totally. What is the
I was-
difference
I
between
was thinking more
worlds
of
and
possibility.
dimensions? I thought they were the same thing. Like when you
Wait,
say in another dimension.
Yeah, it's not another dimension. Okay. Okay. A possible world is. Possible worlds are logically separate. They're causally distinct. They can't interact with one another. Normally, when we talk about a dimension, we're talking about dimensions in this world, in one world, right? But our reality, our world, is made up of many dimensions, right? And maybe there are beings in another dimension, and potentially they could come into ours. Well, that means they're part of our world already, right? They're not ordinarily accessible. They're in another dimension, but that's no different than saying they're in another room. That's just to say that access to them is peculiar and hard to achieve, but they're still in our world. They're just kind of inaccessible most of the time, right? So if you imagine beings from another dimension that can cross over into ours, then they were never in a logically separate, causally distinct world, right? So. And if you believe in like the multiverse hypothesis, the idea that there are there are multiple universes, that our universe is just one bubble within all of these many bubble universes, that's all one logically possible world, right? That's just one world according to modal realism, right? So if you posit the multiverse, that's not modal realism. The multiverse is one possible world. There's another possible world where there's just one universe, and it isn't a multiverse. There's another possible world. There's another possible world where there are exactly two cosmoses, two universes. Two big bangs happened, and and all of that, right? So even the concept of dimensions is not a possible world unless by dimension you mean another reality, okay, within the total reality, and right, that is logically and causally distinct from us. That's completely inaccessible. We can never reach it. We can never get into it. We can never. Nothing there can affect us, and we can't ever affect it. It's logically separate. It's internally consistent. It's complete. Every state of affairs over there is consistent, is internally consistent with itself, and every other state of affairs in that world, just as ours is. Okay.
Yeah, because
So it's not a mere dimension. Okay, and it's not a mere universe, and it's not even a mere multiverse. The concept of a multiverse, that's just one possible world. I mean, think about it. Either this is the only universe, or there's a multiverse, or maybe there's many different universes, but not necessarily a whole, like, you know, an infinity of multiverses or something like that, okay? But the idea is this. When physicists are talking about, do we live in one universe? Or is there only one universe, or is there a multiverse? What they're talking about there are, that's two different possible worlds. There's a possible world where physical reality, there's only one, and then there's a possible world where our universe is just one of many multi-universes.
Ozzy, shut the fuck up. That's all I gotta say.
You'll probably be thrilled to hear that.
I am still like, I'm appalled and excited. I can't even explain. This is insanity.
no, because I always hear that saying, you know, where they go, you know, the sixth dimension, you know, in another dimension, you're not as heavy. Like people could, you know, like not fly, but you could jump 10 times further in another dimension, you know. There's always that, you know, the fifth. I've always heard that, you know, the fifth dimension. You know, things. You know, cars, or you know, they could fly, or something. We have three eyes in a different dimension.
All right, you'll probably be thrilled to hear that I've run into this in programming language semantics before, and it's all a bunch of fun. Is there a name for the position that has logical, metaphysical, and physical possibility are all identical? Never mind. Go ahead.
Where logical, physical, and metaphysical are all identical?
Yeah, the scopes, the possibilities, all that.
I want to say, obviously, our world. No, I don't think so. Right? Hang on a second. I'm going to pull up this definition that distinguishes somewhat the difference between physical, metaphysical, and logical. Just give me a second to do it.
Okay, I don't think anybody's going to read the...
No, that's some pretty
Further
fucked
I
up
only
shit.
have the world that I care about my own. I don't know why now.
No, Socrates, I think, at the City University of New York, so in principle I could actually visit the guy who invented this.
This I'm not sure. I'm not sure this will ever make any relevance to my life whatsoever. Just,
Let's let Steve do a sound check real quick. Steve, go ahead.
Is my mic working?
yeah.
Yeah,
We
it
hear you.
works,
Yeah.
it works great.
You know, I feel like a narcissistic bastard saying that I only care about my own possible world, and that's the only possible world that I give a crap about, right? But it's like you're on the precipice, right? And you're like, okay, I kind of understand this. Yeah, you know, Joe, I'm getting what you're saying. And then Ozzy comes in, and it's like, God, I have no fucking clue what the hell's going on.
Well, this modal realism is just insane, but it seems to be like we may have to all convince ourselves to buy into it.
Right.
I understand what Ozzy's saying, and you know, of course, Ozzy makes perfect sense on it. But you have to embrace the fact that, you know, you're committing to this big, but gigantic paradigm of all these different possible worlds that have to exist, just so you use counterfactual linguistics.
I know, it's insane.
I don't know if I want to do that.
Exactly, just so we can write out symbols? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't want to commit to that. I just don't.
I don't want to either. Something in my very being is really opposed to this. All the shit.
It's actually not a big deal for the programming languages. Computers you find just type anyone out, right? Go ahead.
But you're saying computers use possible worlds? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I was screen sharing how they did. I'll screen share again. Hang on. Here we go.
While you're screen sharing, I'm going to have to leave my mic on so I can switch tabs.
Oh.
So if the dogs start barking, just deal with it, because I've got a definition of the distinctions that might work. So Go ahead, Nadia.
Yeah.
Explain what you got up on there.
Okay. Well, it's relatively simple example of basically a Cartesian closed category and so on. But I guess they're only using the um, arrow functor, whatever you want to call it. But generally, people throw in the richer things, you know, to get you records and Cartesian products and everything else. Co-products too, of course. So
Yeah,
these,
that didn't help. It didn't help me any. I can't even see what you're doing.
well, these,
She's talking about lambda calculus. Looks like.
yeah, it's thematic for. I guess they're using it here for. Some variations of simply typed lambda calculus, but still, they go a little bit. They go a little bit further later on and apply it to other things like products and co-products and all that. Right here we go. Extensionality.
Is this helping people?
Oh, I don't understand this kind of math. I know math, but not this degree.
Well, I totally get this. This is
simple,
so
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing this in kindergarten. What are you people talking about?
gotta get right here. This is the part. You gotta get milk.
Well, I mean, man, you got Spalberg help you get through it in college. Go ahead.
I was sitting in one of Sam's off-air hangout when he was doing some presentation stuff, and he had to use some pretty advanced matrix mathematics. I was barely catching on to that, and this is like that makes this look, this makes that look completely easy because I don't understand this stuff.
That looks like stuff from that movie. What was
good at it.
What was that movie where he had crazy people? He was absolutely brilliant. Do you know the one that he should have won an Oscar for it?
Beautiful Mind.
I don't know.
Yes, that's it. A beautiful mind.
Beautiful Mind. Yeah.
That type of math. Holy shit! That's what it looks like to me.
Well, except that ostensibly Nadia's math makes sense.
I don't. Well, I don't. I'm not exactly practicing this. Even to the extent I studied it, I mean, it's kind of like I just barely eked it out, and then once I was done trying to get through the material, it was basically never touched it again.
All right, so I've got our little definitions here. So let me read. So, this might not be the best time. My daughter's coming home. Somebody else.
Years ago or more. So.
Somebody else talk because I'm going to have to mute because we've got dogs and kids in my house right now.
I have an Inception type thing. How about if you had a possible world and another possible world, but those two possible worlds were identical in all aspects, but they were two separate possible worlds? Could that exist? Or they would? I mean,
wouldn't they just? Yeah, I don't know how they would exist if everything was the exact same. Wouldn't they one negate the other one?
No, because they're possible worlds. I mean, they're two different, separate possible worlds, just containing all the same exact elements.
They are causally.
Well, I wouldn't say they're causally linked. They have to be
causally divided. No, they're causally
divided. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, if you have if they're causally divided and not linked, and they're two different possible worlds, is that possible that they would have a multitude? But if that's the truth, that you would have an infinite number of possible worlds of the same possible world.
What I'm thinking, Steve, is like you ever see that thing where you get in a time machine and they say, if you go back and see yourself, you'll blow up the yourself. You'll kill yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Actually,
Time Rider is like that.
I think for his kind of quote unquote high fluency in the math might look or whatever, it actually does help keep some of the trickiness is straight, because a lot of the issues come with when you're informally discussing it, you can have problems with like self-referencing and having different layers of containing scopes or whatever it is you want to call it of whatever kind of metaphysical thing you're going on about, and they are once you end up slipping up with that, you end up getting all kinds of paradoxes or silliness there. I think there's like these like predicativity or whatever it is, and Remember Skirtle. A lot of these things, the programming language stuff, use the kind of older stuff from like Russell and Whitehead, that the stratified types, right? Which turns out to be really useful in the programming languages and stuff. But if you got like okay, one set contains another and all that inside the possible world, and various things populate your sets. Well, the possible worlds themselves are another kind of thing atop of that, and then there's some level of structure that keeps them from, I don't know, trying to overlap each other or say that one references another, includes another, and so on, right? So
It's really interesting to me how at the beginning the idea was to sort of constrict everything and just talk about truth, and we went through however many years, not very many, and now we are at this crazy stuff again. That's just interesting. So I've got our definitions here. So I'm just going to read this little passage here. So this is from Brief History of Analytic Philosophy. It's very much dumbed down. But I really liked it, and I read it in a few hours and promptly forgot it all. Nonetheless, I have found this. So we can distinguish physical possibility and necessity from metaphysical possibility and necessity, and both from logical possibility and necessity. Okay? Alternate physically possible worlds need to be the same as the actual world in terms of their natural structure. They must have the same natural laws. Metaphysically possible worlds include worlds that are physically impossible given actual natural laws. Much more is metaphysically possible than physically possible. The only limit on metaphysical possibilities is that everything must have its essence. And this is the thing that really tripped me out. Everything must have its essence in every metaphysically possible world. So that brings up this issue of essences, right? And then who determines what is the essence of something? I don't know. Nonetheless, continuing. Logical possibility is the broadest category of possible worlds. The only limit on logical possibility is logical consistency. Okay, so that's, to me, pretty clear, right? So, Steve, I think you were talking about, well, what about a world where everything is exactly the same except for one thing, right? So that would be...
No, actually, no.
No?
Everything is the same, completely the same. If there's something different between them, then it would still be one possible world. I mean, as Ozzy was saying, a many possible world situation, like the wave functions in quantum mechanics, any type thing that had been anything different, no matter any kind of multiple worlds you have from our world, that's one possible world, right? That's how I'm looking at it. Is that correct?
I don't think that would be one. I don't think that would be one other possible world. I think that would open up.
No, how would it not be though? It's one possible world, and then all the other manifestations of the collapsing of the wave function, so basically the many worlds hypothesis, that's still one possible world. It's not different possible worlds. It's our possible world, is it not? I mean, that's how I'm kind of looking at it, but I'm way off on that one.
I don't know.
It actually does. It actually does relate. Many worlds interpretation versus Copenhagen, right?
Yeah, versus Copenhagen.
More interpretations and hypotheses, because they aren't really like testable things, whatever.
Right, but I mean, it's still a possible world out here.
Well, I think what is it? Being hoisted on the petard of essentialism pretty much is lethal to it. I think.
It's interesting how essentialism is now seems to be wrapped up in it. Joe, are you still here?
If it rests on essentialism, it's pretty much, I think, not coherent.
Yeah. I wonder about that. I'm assuming that somebody has managed to save, modality in general, and not having it rest on essentials or essentialism, because that's really trouble, I think. But I don't know enough about it. Does anybody know? Have we figured out a way to do it without requiring essentialism in order to discuss the sort of metaphysical possibilities? Like, why is that even a requirement? Why does everything but the, I don't know, essential thing, why must the essential thing stay the same? Like, why can't I be an alligator? Why do I, in my metaphysically other world possibility, why do I still have to be human? Let's just assume that what is my essence is that I am human. Why decide that that has to stay the same? That's something I don't quite understand.
I think it has to be an assumption, wouldn't it?
Well,
I mean,
it's an
I
assumption
mean,
if we want to talk about a metaphysically possible world. It looks like from this description that I've got to keep my essence when I'm thinking about that other world, right? I can't imagine, being an alligator in the other world if I'm talking about
okay,
metaphysically possible worlds.
because
I've
you
got
would
to
no longer be you.
right, because I would
Okay.
no longer be exactly right. I would no longer be me. But I don't understand exactly where that comes from. Like, why is that a requirement?
Would that go to something like the
Metaphysical
law of
possible.
identity or something? I mean, you can't be you and not you. So even in a possible world, Helena cannot be not Helena. So in a
Yeah.
possible world where you exist, but what makes you you though? I mean, this is like the whole Inception thing.
Well, that's the thing. Like that's the thing. Like Putnam just claimed that H2O is the essence of water, but why? That seems pretty damn arbitrary to me,
I have
right?
no idea.
Right. So I mean, this essence thing to me is an issue. I don't like it at all because it seems to me quite arbitrary what's designated as an essence. And so
Right.
just declaring that for a
but
metaphysically possible world, the essence must be maintained causes so many cans of worms, at least the way I see it now.
this is how we think about it. Just think about it when the logic zone comes in. He's going to explain his version about it. That will be interesting.
Yeah, the logic only zone was going to be
He's he's going to do a lot of explaining. So.
he was going to be our dog pile.
But like I said, if I look at just at the modal logic side, like I said, for fun, you could use it as a possibility generator, but you could also use it as what was said in the dicto and the ray. Like for example, a tugboat, an oil tanker, an aircraft carrier. They're all vehicles that travel across the water. But what was the other thing again? I forgot. Anyway, you can just use
The
it
other
for.
thing was the intention, all of the things, all of the
Right.
properties that make something
Yes.
a vehicle. that
Yes.
travels
Right.
in water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was it. You can use it as that, but I wouldn't go as far as the different worlds and when it's taking it a bit too far. But I would just go
Yeah,
as far
I
as
agree with
possibility.
you, but
If
what
you're talking
about
about
what Ozzy said? If you're just going to pretend that it's just some way to think, right?
yeah,
Then you do have a problem because what makes it true? What makes your hypothetical
yeah.
true?
That's the possibility. You go A is A because you didn't step in front of the bus, but it could be B, it could be C, it could yeah. You can go to infinity. That's so it's just for fun as a tool
Oh,
to think
But
about
where,
possibilities. But
Alexander, though, where does the essence stop and the traits begin? Because as Ozzy points out, if you have a different Ozzy somewhere, God forbid that thought, but if you have a different Ozzy, one is enough. If you have a different Ozzy, as different hairs on his head, those are just traits, as he points out. I mean, so we know there could be different possibilities of somebody with different traits. I mean, I might be a 6 foot tall, African woman somewhere. I mean, who knows, right? But what's the essence? What does it make Helena what she's reading about that says the essence has to be consistent? That's where I get lost. What does that even mean?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I think, at least in the little thing that I read, it seems to be not a big deal to claim that being human is the essence of humanity, and being H2O is
That's arbitrary.
Is the essence of water. As far as I'm concerned, it is arbitrary. But I can understand if you think about the difference between Ozzy and an alligator versus Ozzy with an extra hair, right? The hairs are accidental, but the alligator is something deeper, is something, essence. There's something essential about that.
I don't buy it.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Right?
That's way too arbitrary for me to even contemplate.
Right, but so perhaps there's something wrong with you and me, Steve, right?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
So we need to expand our mind or whatever is required, right? Because it really does. Listen, there is no truth maker if we don't buy into this. Or perhaps there is, and I don't know about it. I wish Joe were still here because I think he's sort of up on all the arguments against it and that kind of thing. Anyway, let's do last comments if anybody has any. This was a great first hangout. It was really fun. I'm so glad Ozzy came in. I don't know. My final thoughts are I want to read more about it. Anybody else have any sort of quick ass final thoughts? Because I need to go because my kid is here.
Real quick, I'm just still confused about the actuality of these possible worlds, as in like having a physical manifestation of sorts, like a realism, like a materialism that they actually exist, and that's I thought the whole crux of the matter. That's what James and I were talking about before.
Yeah, that is the whole thing.
I can't get into that though. I can't. I don't know.
I can't either. Look, imagine eating an apple, right? After each bite, there's a new world. And then can you create worlds just by positing, like, really immoral things, and now you've created a real world? I mean, to me, it gets something is wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
we're gonna
possibility.
suss this out more, because I mean I do understand what Ozzy's saying and why he's saying it, but I'm not willing to commit to that fully kind of thing.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Nobody
Yeah,
has to because it's too out there.
Well, no, it's not out there. I mean, unless it necessarily follow. I mean, he's right. It's you can't start talking about counterfactuals as truth propositions without saying these possible worlds exist.
Exactly. That's what a counterfactual statement can only be true in a modal realistic view. That's it. In the possibility of, and that's it. There's no because the Quine dude, even in what is rule number 6 of his doctrine, says that like I said causal. How do you
Causal?
Causal.
Yeah, you say it causal. Yeah.
Ozzy just wrote something in the chat and it just throws me all off. Did you see what
They
he
are
wrote?
causal separated. So
Causally separated.
causally separated. Yeah.
And Ozzy, last thoughts real quick. Ozzy makes perfect sense on here, but this is what pisses me off because it makes sense and I don't like it.
Well, listen. I feel ya. Go ahead, read it.
He says, Steve, forget about physicality. There's a possible world where the laws of physics are different. There's a possible world where idealism is true and there is no matter what. And that just God, it makes sense what he says, but I can't accept it. I don't know why.
Look,
And then
I
there's
can
the other
understand. I
possible
can
world where
understand
there's an Aussie, instead of writing this, he just wrote
Conceptually,
a four joke.
Right, I can understand the idea that there's a possible world. I can't get behind there is a possible world.
And he's right, though. There's a possible world idealism would reign supreme. I mean,
Of course.
so I don't know. Oh,
Yeah. All right. So anyway, this is a good primer. Did anyone else want to make a last minute thought? Eric, maybe, or Nadia, or anybody? Otherwise, we're going to close it out. Anybody have any last minute sort of whatever?
Thank you for the invite.
All right. So this was a great starter. Nadia, did you come close to the mic because you wanted to make a final statement?
Well, the headset's wireless, but I was gonna briefly say, well, it doesn't seem like the possible worlds have the kind of exact standing that we would, I don't know, call like our reality. It's as I understand it. So I don't think it really is big sources we can get like up in arms about that there quote unquote are, in the sense there are these possible worlds. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I will prefer to stay up in arms until I read a little more. All right.
Right to indignation.
Well, yeah.
We're indignant because we're chauvinists. Going to Ozzy, we're modal realistic chauvinist or something of that effect.
Because it is
Metaphysical
invisible.
All right, so I'm going to close it off, and I have a feeling that there's going to be more about this. Like, if I just reread the chapter, I'd probably be ready to start a new hang. And it seems like, I mean, to me anyway, this is intriguing and fun. So if there's an interest, we'll do another one like this. And I'm going to click stop broadcast now.